Now, we have two questions from our fans writing on our board right now. Have you been impressed that Harbaugh went with all young coordinators this year? One, and what do you think of Biff Poggi? Obviously, Jim Harbaugh bringing him in from, I think, Maryland, Baltimore, and he has been a huge, when it comes to the recruiting class and bringing some of these good young recruits over there in Michigan. So what are your thoughts with those two questions?
Well, I'll take the first one, the coordinators. I think 3 years ago when he brought in Josh Gaddis. Now, it hasn't produced an explosive offense, but you think about Jim Harbaugh. What do we know about him? All right, he was a former quarterback. He's been a coordinator. He's been a head coach. He's always been his offense. And I thought it was very impressive for a guy that is supposed to be a quarterback whisperer, is supposed to be this great offensive coach, took a step back and say, how can I make my team better? Is it better if I take a step back and bring in somebody else who's got some new thoughts on offense, some new thoughts on the way of operating and doing things, and then I can sprinkle in, some of what my theories on offense are be. I thought that was a very humbling moment for Jim Harbaugh, and it's really hard for coaches to take that step back and make an adjustment and a move like that. And then this year, again, Don Brown was a really good defensive coordinator, but it was all about pressure. It was all about man coverage. And Jim Harbaugh spoke publicly a number of times praising Don Brown. To have to move on from him, that was a tough decision. But Jim Harbaugh is willing to make the tough decisions for the betterment of the program, to figure out what it is that they haven't been able to do. They've had 10-win seasons. They've been able to beat Michigan State a couple of times, but they haven't beat them on a regular basis. They lost last year, which was very embarrassing. They have yet to beat Ohio State, and that's the entire goal. If you could compete at the end of the year with Ohio State, you're good enough to do that, you're going to be good enough to compete in every single game up to that point. So he went out and gets Mike McDonald from the Baltimore Ravens. Mike brings in a bunch of young guys who are great recruiters, energized guys. They were able to get Steve Clinkscale from Kentucky, bring him over, and this was after spring ball. He's a great recruiter, but the way that the defensive backfield under Clinkscale and Ron Bellamy have played this year compared to last year, with some different theories back there, going some zone coverage, cover 2, cover 3, a number of different things that they're sprinkling in there. Those are the same guys, but they're playing with much more confidence because they're not always on an island. They're not always feeling the pressure of, I've got to play my best for 75 snaps, and if I mess up once or if I mess up twice, we lose. That is a lot of pressure to have to play with, especially for an 18, 19-year-old kid.
So since you cover the Big Ten, this alliance that's being formed now as a result of Oklahoma and Texas now going to the SEC, the Big Ten obviously now merging with the ACC and the Pac-12. So how do you think that's going to impact the landscape of college football, the landscape of the scheduling, the recruiting? Obviously, the rivalries are still be built in with the Big Ten especially, but the scheduling as a whole, and obviously the college football playoff, if it gets expanded too, how do you think it'll overall impact it for either for the better or for the worse?
I don't really know what the alliance is. It's a couple of guys shaking hands behind closed doors. Oh, yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to do that. And it all sounds really good. But scheduling, I know Michigan's schedule is planned for like the next 6 or 7 years. Right. So what does the scheduling even mean? By that time, the college football playoffs are going to be expanded. I think, the landscape of college football is going to look different. I think what it really means is that, okay, we see what the SEC is doing. And you know what? They've got the power to do it. They're drawing in, Texas and Oklahoma. The last time they expanded, they brought in big names and powerful programs as well. What this does is it keeps each of those conferences, and I think probably most importantly, the ACC and the Pac-12, relevant. Right? The Big Ten is going to be relevant. The Pac-12 hasn't been in the college football playoffs in 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. And if you become irrelevant and you can't recruit because they're all going to Clemson, they're all going to Alabama, they're all going to Ohio State, they're all going to Michigan, you've got to be able to keep a seat at the table. You don't want to lose that power when it does come time for college football expansion. Because if you don't have a vote, now all of a sudden, if they didn't at least threaten the alliance, we probably would already have a blueprint for a 12-team playoff.
One of the fans says, who is your favorite Michigan running back through the years, and are you surprised with the Georgia Dogs this year that have played? Arguably, they've been the best team in the nation. I'm not surprised with Alabama, but a lot of people are very surprised with Georgia, and a lot of people picked them to win the whole thing this year.
Well, I'll take that last one. Georgia, and I think we can all agree that we're probably heading for a Georgia-Alabama SEC championship game. Alabama, their strength right now is their offense. This isn't your typical Alabama defense. They're good, but they're not great. But the offense, I think, is very effective, and they're very explosive. And then you look at Georgia, what's their strength? Obviously, it's their defense. And, Kirby Smart has built this team to try and beat Alabama. And, you look at the receivers that Alabama has had over the years. It's all about speed. It's all about explosion. How do you combat that? Well, you recruit speed on defense. I don't know that there is a faster defense in the country. In fact, I could probably guarantee you there's not a faster defense from linebackers, defensive line to the secondary as fast as Georgia. I think that's going to be a great matchup as long as everybody on defense can stay healthy. And match up with Alabama. I can't wait to see that game. And remind me what the first part of that question was.
Who was your favorite Michigan running back through the years?
Oh, man, that's a tough one. Golly. Mike Hart he's obviously back on the coaching staff, all-time leading rusher at Michigan. Great guy. I've really enjoyed getting to know him a little bit more. He played after me. Anthony Thomas, I played with him, the A-Train. He was good, but I think I got to go with Jared Bunch, Tyrone Wheatley. I mean, there's just so many good running backs. I'd have to go with Tyrone Wheatley because he was a senior my freshman year. And to watch him work and to watch him play, I mean, this is a guy that had great success in Rose Bowls. He was unstoppable at times, but continue to put the work in. Oh, gosh, I almost forgot one of the guys that ran behind me, Tamunga Biakabatuka, probably the greatest name in the backfield that Michigan's ever had.
What a great name.
One of the greatest performances. What was it, 323 yards against Ohio State in 1995? Maybe the single greatest performance of a Michigan running back.
That is a great name, definitely. I want to ask now, with your Washington teammates, is there any one teammate that stood out to you, either on the offensive line? There's a lot of good offensive linemen on that team with Chris Samuels, Randy Thomas, guys like that, but also a lot of those skill players that they had. Was there any one teammate that you especially stood out to you as being a great guy and maybe have a good backstory behind it?
Oh, man. Obviously my offensive lineman, Randy and I, Randy Thomas, you referenced him. He and I played together for 5 or 6 years, both at the end of our career there in Washington. Corey Raymer, Casey Robach, two Wisconsin Badgers. You love those Wisconsin guys.
Hate them.
And probably closest to those guys. But Chris Samuels, he and I played together for 9 years. He was drafted the year after me, and I absolutely loved it when they used to say, maybe the best bookends in the NFL. And it had really nothing to do with me being on the right side. It was the fact that Chris Samuels was just that good. And he was a guy, he knew he was good. He played with confidence. And I love guys that even though they know they're good, they go in there and they put the work in the weight room. They continue to try and improve. But there's so many guys. Sean Taylor, loved playing with him. And it broke my heart, absolutely broke my heart when he was taken way too early from us and murdered. And that just I feel bad for football fans that they didn't get to see as much as I got to see from him. When he was at practice, you knew if your assignment was to go downfield and block, you either you pulled up about 5 yards shy and just said, okay, that's enough. Or you better bring it, because he brought it every single day.
Okay, before we let you go, quick prediction. Is this the year Michigan knocks off Ohio State University?
I think it is. I think it is. I think when you look at Ohio State's defense and some of the troubles they had, now they're better that they've made a switch at, who's calling the defense. Kerry Combs, I think he is a terrific recruiter. He does a great job of developing talent in the secondary. I just don't think I go back to what I said at the very beginning. Some guys are position coaches, some guys are coordinators, some guys are head coaches. Ryan Day, I think he's a really good head coach. Kerry Combs, I think he's a terrific coach in the secondary. But I think this is the year that Michigan as a team is playing as a team. They're not going out there trying to figure out, okay, what's my draft status? How many, am I dinged up a little bit? I can't go out there and play 100%, so I'm not going to play. Every single guy is going out there. Their one focus is beating Ohio State. What am I doing this week? Yeah, we're playing Nebraska, but what am I doing to beat Ohio State? The question is going to be, can Michigan's defense hold up with that offense? They've got some serious speed. I think the two best receivers in college football right now are Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. How is Michigan going to defend those guys? They're going to get some catches, but it just can't be, backbreaker catches. You got to make sure you keep them in front of you. And I think Mike McDonald, his scheme on defense, the ability to put pressure on the quarterback, especially if they got that young freshman in there, nobody can get rattled like a freshman. Go in there, knock his teeth out, and get a win.
Well, I just want to ask one more quick one.
Go ahead.
Just playing with Washington. If you were in control of changing the name, what would you change it to and why?
Oh,
I would have changed it to the Hogs.
Nice.
I mean, it keeps it traditional. And I mean, everybody, when they talk about Washington, right now, it's really hard for us. We're trying to make that adjustment. It's like trying to figure out where the Chargers play. I still think they play in San Diego. The Raiders, all right, they should be in Oakland. They're in Vegas. It just doesn't roll off the tongue. You think about the Washington Redskins. All right, I understand we're moving on from that name. What do you know about the Washington football team? One of the greatest traditions in all of the NFL, and especially in Washington, is the Hogs. I think they should go Washington Hogs.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's a good name. That really is. Because we've been doing that. We're trying to figure out, because this Washington football team, I mean, that's a terrible name. And for them to try to sell that to the fans, I think is ridiculous. And I understand why they had to get rid of the Redskins and why the fans. But it's been around forever. To take it away, it just ruins the whole thought of football. Those Washington Redskin teams in the 90s and the 80s, they were special. They were special. I mean, we talk about Todd Bowles, one of the greatest defensive players to ever come out of Washington. And I actually, years and years ago, I interviewed Todd Bowles, and I said, when this was going on with the Washington Redskins, I said, what would you call the Washington Redskins? He said, I would call them the Washington Redskins. That's what everybody knows them as. So it's terrible how the NFL is trying to make everybody excited or happy about a team that is more known for what their name was. Now, all of a sudden, you're trying to change it and figure it out what the name is going to be for the future. So it's terrible.
Rich O-line history, too, John. So it definitely bodes well. Obviously, you, Chris Samuels, and Joe Jacoby way back, Russ Grimm, Trent Williams now, who could be a future Hall of Famer.
Yep, it's crazy.
Rich O-line
Absolutely.
history, so definitely fitting.
So, John, why don't you tell the fans how they can find you on social media?
My Twitter is at Jon Jansen 77. You can find me, if you search Go Blue Podcasts, that's where my whole family of podcasts live. I've got another one that we just started up with former offensive lineman with the Green Bay Packers, as well as the Lions, TJ Lang. It's called Necessary Roughness. You can find that on Odyssey. And I'm on in Detroit every morning from 6 to 10, Stoney and Jansen. So 97.1 The Ticket. There's a lot of things that I've got going on. I love them all, and this is the time of the year that for what I do is the best, because we're talking about football. We don't have to worry about, basketball. We don't have to worry about hockey or baseball, right? They're starting up and finishing up, but who cares? It's football season. It's all gold right now.
Michigan fans are excited. This might be the year that Michigan squeaks into that playoff, and if they do, Jim Harbaugh brings the championship over there in Michigan, it would shut everybody up, telling him he doesn't fit in the NCAA. He needs to go back to the NFL. I just think it's crazy. I think he's going crazy, and he wants to bring home a championship to Michigan. That's why he was there. That's why he decided to go back there, and I really think he deserves it.
Nobody wants it more than Jim Harbaugh. Nobody feels the pressure or the inadequacies more than Jim Harbaugh. You're right. He wants it as much as anybody, and I tell you what, we don't want to just squeak in. We want to go roaring in and take control of that. We want to go in there and control this son of a bitch. Let's go.